My rich aunt left me everything. Now my family wants their share. I, 29F, inherited $8.3 million from my aunt 3 months ago, and my entire family has lost their minds. I'm talking screaming matches, lawyers, threats, and manipulation tactics that would make a soap opera writer jealous. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My Aunt Caroline was my dad's older sister. She never married, never had kids, and built a small pharmaceutical company from the ground up in the 80s. She sold it in 2019 for an absolute fortune. The family always knew she was wealthy. The penthouse, the vacation homes, the casual mentions of her financial advisors. But nobody knew exactly how much we were talking about. Nobody except me, apparently. Here's the thing everyone seems to have forgotten. Aunt Caroline was treated like an ATM by my family for decades. Every birthday, every holiday, every family gathering became an opportunity for someone to ask her for money. My cousin Brandon needed help with his mortgage. My uncle Dave wanted funding for his restaurant concept. My mom constantly hinted about how hard it was to make ends meet, despite her and Dad both having decent jobs. Aunt Caroline would smile tightly and sometimes write checks to keep the peace, but I saw how it wore her down. I was different with her. I never asked for anything. When I was 8, after my parents had spent an entire Thanksgiving dinner subtly pressuring her about investing in my dad's friend's timeshare scheme, I wrote her an apology note. I didn't really understand what was happening, but I knew she'd looked sad, and I wanted her to feel better. I drew her a picture of us having tea together and wrote, "I'm sorry they were mean. I think you're nice." She kept that note. I know because it was in a frame on her desk when she died. After that, Aunt Caroline and I developed our own relationship. She'd take me to museums, botanical gardens, and nice restaurants where she'd let me order whatever I wanted. We'd talk about books, art, science, everything. She never talked down to me. As I got older, she mentored me through college applications, career decisions, and breakups. She paid for my undergraduate degree outright as a gift, which my parents accepted happily while simultaneously complaining she didn't help with my brother's tuition. My brother Tyler, 32M, partied his way out of 2 different colleges. Aunt Caroline told him she'd pay for education, not a 4-year vacation. He still brings this up as evidence of her favoritism. When I graduated and started working in data analysis, Aunt Caroline was my biggest cheerleader. She'd ask about my projects, give advice from her business experience, and take me to dinner once a month. Just us. No one else in the family bothered to maintain a relationship with her beyond asking for money or obligatory holiday appearances. Last year, Aunt Caroline was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. She told me privately before anyone else, asked me to keep it quiet because she wasn't ready for the circus. I visited her 3 times a week during treatment, brought her books, watched old movies with her, sat with her during chemo. It was brutal watching this brilliant, strong woman fade. The rest of the family? My parents visited maybe twice a month. Tyler came by once in 6 months. My Uncle Dave showed up exactly 3 times, each visit ending with him mentioning a business opportunity, until Aunt Caroline had her nurse escort him out. She died on a Tuesday morning in February. I was holding her hand. The funeral was packed with distant relatives I'd never met, all sobbing theatrically. My mother gave a eulogy about how close she and Caroline were. I had to step outside. The will reading was 2 weeks later. Aunt Caroline's attorney, a sharp woman named Patricia, laid it out clearly. There were some small bequests, $10,000 to her housekeeper, $25,000 to a few charities. My parents got $50,000. Uncle Dave got $50,000. Tyler got $50,000. Everything else came to me: the investment portfolio, the properties, the cash accounts. After taxes and estate fees, roughly $8.3 million. The room went silent. Then my mother said, "There must be a mistake." There wasn't. Patricia read the relevant section of the will. To my beloved niece, who loved me for who I was and not what I had, who gave me her time when it was the only thing I truly wanted, I leave the remainder of my estate. May it bring her the freedom and peace she helped me find in my final year. My father stood up and walked out. Tyler started shouting about how this was bullshit and he'd contest it. Uncle Dave accused me of manipulating a dying woman. My mother just stared at me like I'd betrayed her. That was 3 months ago. Since then, my life has been hell. My parents showed up at my apartment the next day with a plan for how to fairly distribute the money. They'd calculated that each family member should get an equal share, approximately $1.4 million each. They had spreadsheets. My mother cried and said she'd always dreamed of retiring early, and didn't I want that for her? I said no. Tyler threatened to sue me for undue influence. His lawyer sent a letter. My lawyer, because yes, I immediately hired one, sent a letter back explaining that he had no case whatsoever. Aunt Caroline had been mentally sharp until her final week. The will was ironclad, and there were literally dozens of witnesses to the fact that I was the only family member who consistently cared for her. Uncle Dave started a whisper campaign, told extended family I'd isolated Caroline from everyone, that I'd poisoned her mind against them. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly called to tell me how disappointed they were in my selfishness. My mother tried manipulation. She'd call crying about how they couldn't afford things I knew they could afford because I'd seen their Facebook posts about their vacation to Cancun. She told me my grandmother was heartbroken that I'd torn the family apart. When I pointed out that maybe the family should examine why they only valued Aunt Caroline for her money, she hung up on me. The worst was my brother. Tyler showed up drunk at my apartment at 11 p.m., pounding on the door, screaming that I'd stolen his inheritance, that Aunt Caroline had been his aunt too, and I was a conniving bitch. My neighbors called the police. I filed for a restraining order. That's when things got truly ugly. My parents took to social media. Vague posts about betrayal and greed and money changing people. My mother's friends started leaving comments on my Instagram. Family members I barely knew sent me messages ranging from guilt trips to outright hostility. A cousin I'd played with as a kid sent me a 5-paragraph message about how her daughter needed braces, and couldn't I spare $15,000 since I clearly had more than I needed. When I didn't respond, she posted in a family Facebook group that I'd refused to help a child in need. I was invited to Sunday dinner at my parents' house. A trap. I walked in to find my parents, Tyler, Uncle Dave, and 3 other relatives waiting. It was an intervention. They'd prepared speeches about family obligation, about how Aunt Caroline would have wanted me to share, about how I was being selfish and cruel. I listened for 10 minutes, then stood up. Aunt Caroline left you each $50,000. That's $50,000 more than any of you deserved after how you treated her. She made her choice. I'm respecting it. If you ever contact me about this money again, we're done. My mother shouted after me as I left. She was MY's sister-in-law. You can't just. She was a person, I turned back. A person you ignored unless you needed something. A person who died knowing most of her family only cared about her bank account. I was there. Where were you? I haven't spoken to any of them since. That was 6 weeks ago. I changed my number, blocked them all on social media. My lawyer sent cease and desist letters to the most aggressive family members. I moved to a new apartment in a different part of the city with actual security, forwarded my mail to a P.O. box. Tyler's lawsuit was dismissed with prejudice. Turns out, I want money isn't legal grounds to overturn a will. He had to pay court costs. I heard through the grapevine that my parents helped fund his legal fees, and now they're fighting about that too. I'm in therapy now, working through the guilt and grief. Because yes, I feel guilty sometimes. I was raised to believe family comes first, that you sacrifice for your relatives, that money shouldn't matter. But my therapist asked me something that changed my perspective. If your aunt had left you nothing, would these people be in your life? The answer is yes, but they'd still be treating me the same way they always did, as an afterthought, unless they needed something. So here's what I'm doing with the money. I paid off my student loans, bought a beautiful 2-bedroom condo with a view of the city, set up a trust that'll provide comfortable passive income for life, Donated $500,000 to pancreatic cancer research in Aunt Caroline's name. Started a scholarship fund for first-generation college students at her alma mater. I quit my job, or rather, I'm transitioning to freelance consulting on my own terms. I'm taking the art classes I've always wanted to take. Reading, traveling. Last month I spent 2 weeks in Portugal just because I'd never been. I'm dating someone I met at a museum. He's a high school teacher. He knew me for 3 months before I told him about the inheritance, and his reaction was, "That's nice, but can we talk about this Rothko exhibit?" I'm building a life Aunt Caroline would be proud of. A life centered on experiences, learning, kindness, and peace. Do I miss my family? Sometimes I miss the idea of them, the fantasy of what a family should be. But I don't miss the reality, the constant pressure, the guilt trips, the sense that I was only valuable for what I could provide. The last thing Aunt Caroline said to me was, "Don't let them bully you, sweetheart. You deserve to be happy." So that's what I'm doing. My family wanted their share of her money. What they don't understand is that I already got my share of what mattered. Her time, her wisdom, her love, and her belief in me. The money is just the tool that lets me honor her memory by living freely. They can stay angry. I'm staying at peace. Edit since people are asking. No, I don't feel bad about not sharing. Aunt Caroline had decades to leave her money to all of them equally. She chose not to. I'm respecting her wishes. Yes, I'm worried someone might try something crazy. Hence the security building, the doorman, the lawyer on retainer. No, I haven't heard from them in a month. I assume they've finally accepted reality or found someone else to blame. And to the person who DM'd me calling me a selfish gold digger. I loved my aunt when she was a broke graduate student starting her company, and I'd love her just as much if she died penniless. The money doesn't change that she was the only family member who actually saw me as a person. That's what inheritance really is, by the way. Not just money. It's the values, the lessons, and the love someone leaves behind. I got all of that from Aunt Caroline. The rest of them just wanted a check. Final edit. To everyone sharing their own stories of family estrangement over money, I see you, and I'm sorry you went through it. It's not easy choosing yourself over family expectations, but sometimes it's the only choice that leads to peace. Aunt Caroline taught me that my worth isn't determined by how much I sacrifice for others. I'm finally learning that lesson. I hope she knows I'm doing okay. I think she does.